When Captain Alvarez called me into his office, I thought I was getting chewed out for the vending machine incident. Or maybe the time I called backup to catch a runaway iguana in a Taco Bell. I wasn't expecting a new assignment. Definitely not this assignment. He slid a manila folder across the desk and leaned back in his creaky chair, arms folded like he was bracing for my reaction. "You're going undercover," he said, "posing as a couple." I blinked. "A couple? Like a romantic couple?" Alvarez didn't smile. "Yes, Torres. That's usually what the word means." I flipped open the folder and found surveillance photos, addresses, and the names of 2 mid-level drug distributors who lived in an upscale gated community called Briarwood Oaks. Apparently, they hosted lavish dinner parties and were currently under investigation for trafficking. The operation required blending in as new neighbors. 2 men, recently moved in, married on paper, and sharing one bed. Literally. I looked up, suddenly realizing the catch. Wait, who's the other half of this happy domestic fantasy? The door creaked behind me, and I didn't even have to turn around to know who it was. Detective Marcus Reed. Tall, square-jawed, silent as a shadow. If brooding had a face, it was his. He nodded once at Alvarez, then glanced at me with those cool, unreadable eyes. "Oh, come on," I muttered under my breath. "You've worked together," Alvarez said, ignoring the tension. "You're both clean-cut, fit the profile. You'll move into a surveillance-equipped property across the street from the suspects. You'll be given backstories, photos, furniture, even a dog if we need to sell it." Marcus looked at me. "I'm allergic to dogs." Great. We weren't even moved in, and the fake marriage was already falling apart. The cover apartment was nicer than anything I could afford on a cop's salary. Open-plan kitchen, huge windows, and, of course, 1 bedroom, 1 bed. "Guess we're gonna be real close," I joked as we unpacked. I glanced at Marcus, who was placing books on the shelf with the kind of precision usually reserved for bomb disposal. He didn't laugh. He didn't even smirk. We spent the rest of the day reviewing our backstory. Names, jobs, how we met, where we honeymooned. Apparently, we were Caleb and Jace, 2 digital consultants who'd met in a spin class and had a shared obsession with pasta making and true crime podcasts. "Seriously," I said, flipping through the briefing. "You in a spin class?" He deadpanned. "You making pasta?" Touché. Later that night, we practiced subtle touches. Casual familiarity. Stuff couples do when they think no one's watching. "You'll need to be convincing," our handler had said. "Hand on the back." Eye contact. Laugh at his dumb jokes. "Hey," I said, nudging Marcus while we sat on the couch, pretending to look like we belonged. "Try not to fall in love with me too fast." "I'll manage," he replied, not even looking up from the file. I hated how steady his voice was. I hated how calm he looked, like this was just another stakeout and not a slow dance into my own confusion. I'd seen Marcus Reed in action, calculated, sharp, intimidating. But this was different. This was personal proximity. And it messed with me. I didn't even know if he was into guys. Not that it mattered. This was just a job, right? We shared dinner, takeout from the Thai place on the corner, and went over signals, body language cues, and potential neighbor interactions. "You really think people are gonna buy this?" I asked, waving a fork. "I mean us." He glanced at me, then actually smiled. "We look good together." I choked on a piece of chicken. "Relax," he said, that ghost of a smile still playing at the edge of his lips. "Just practicing." Practice, right? That's all it was. A simulation. A cover. That night, I lay on the left side of the bed, facing the wall, while Marcus lay on the right, reading a book like it was the most natural thing in the world. We didn't touch. We didn't speak. But I could hear him breathing. I could feel the weight of his presence beside me, steady and quiet and warm, and I hated how my pulse quickened. I closed my eyes and told myself this was just a job. Another assignment. Another mask to wear. But even as I repeated it in my head, something felt different this time. Something felt dangerous. Something felt real. I thought going undercover with Marcus would be the hard part. I didn't realize pretending to love him might be harder. By the end of our first week in Briarwood Oaks, I'd already memorized the name of every neighbor, dog, and lawn flamingo within a 3-house radius. The people here were friendly, but the kind of friendly that asked too many questions, smiled a little too long, and definitely noticed if your husband wasn't holding your hand, which made the dinner party invite from the O'Connors, our primary suspects, all the more urgent. "Tonight's about blending in," Marcus said that afternoon, straightening his tie in the mirror. "They're testing us, watching how we move together. We need to sell it." "You saying I'm not convincing?" I asked, throwing on my blazer. "You fidget when you lie," he said flatly. "I do not. You're doing it right now." I looked down. Damn it, he was right. My fingers were twitching. By the time we walked across the street to the O'Connors' pristine 2-story house, I was sweating through my undershirt and silently repeating every detail of our fake relationship. Married 3 years.
Met in Atlanta.
Caleb liked jazz. Jace liked country. We fought about laundry, always lost the remote, and supposedly couldn't agree on whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It doesn't. As we approached the porch, Marcus slipped his fingers into mine like it was second nature. My brain short-circuited. His hand was warm, confident, like he'd done this 1,000 times, like he wanted to hold mine. "Relax," he said softly, under his breath. "They're watching through the window." I swallowed hard. Right? Of course. Inside, we were greeted by a dozen too-white smiles and the scent of expensive cologne mixed with lemon risotto. The O'Connors introduced us around. "This is Caleb and Jace, our lovely new neighbors." And I quickly realized we were the main event. The questions came in waves. "How long have you been together? Who cooks? Where did you honeymoon?" Marcus answered everything with ease. He laughed at the right times, brushed my arm when he spoke, even leaned in to whisper a joke in my ear, his breath warm against my skin. I hated how much I liked it. At one point, I bent down to grab a dropped napkin and felt his hand rest lightly on the small of my back as I rose. Protective, possessive, intimate. "That's not how you touch someone you love?" I whispered, half joking, as we passed through the kitchen toward the wine. Marcus didn't miss a beat. "How would you know?" I turned to say something, anything, but the look on his face stopped me. It wasn't teasing. It was calm, steady, and there was something behind his eyes I couldn't name. We made it through the evening like pros, toasted to new beginnings, laughed at the neighbors' bad puns, played the part so well, I almost forgot it was a part. But the moment that really messed with me came later, just before we left. We were saying goodbyes at the door when Marcus leaned in, eyes soft, voice low, and pressed a kiss to my temple. "Ready to go, babe?" he asked. The word hit harder than it should have. And for a second, I just stood there, nodding, hoping no one noticed the way my stomach flipped. Back at the apartment, I threw off my jacket, kicked off my shoes, and slumped onto the couch like I just run a marathon. Marcus, of course, looked like he could have done it all again. "You were good tonight," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You sound surprised." "I am surprised. I didn't know you had range." He smirked. "What? You think I'm only good at interrogations and kicking down doors? I thought emotional nuance would make you break out in hives." He chuckled. Actually chuckled. As he poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the kitchen counter. I hesitated, then asked the question that had been sitting in my chest all night. "How'd you do it?" He glanced over. "Do what?" "Touch me like that. Talk to me like that. Kiss me like that." He didn't answer right away, just studied me with that same unreadable expression. Then he said it. I wasn't pretending that hard. The room went quiet. The hum of the fridge, the soft tick of the wall clock, the sound of my pulse suddenly in my ears. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Marcus set his glass down. "Good night, Torres." He walked past me, heading toward the bedroom. But before he disappeared down the hall, he looked back. Just once. And in that look, there was something raw. Something real. Like he knew. Like he saw right through me. And for a moment, I let him. He looked at me like he knew. Like he saw right through me. And for a moment, I let him. You know? I muttered one night as I brushed my teeth beside him. We could just get a pull-out couch. Marcus didn't look up from where he was washing his hands. Why? I spat into the sink, rinsed. Because we're two grown men sharing one bed like it's a honeymoon suite. He dried his hands and finally met my eyes in the mirror. And if one of them decides to peek through the blinds at 3 a.m., we'd better look like we're used to it. I rolled my eyes but didn't argue. It was sound logic, even if it felt like emotional waterboarding. Sleeping beside Marcus Reed was complicated. He wasn't a blanket thief. He didn't snore. He didn't talk in his sleep. He just existed, all 6-foot-something of him, on the other half of the bed, radiating heat and quiet intensity like it was his superpower. The first few nights, we kept to our sides like warring nations. By night 4, we were brushing shoulders when we turned. By night 6, I was hyper-aware of how his breathing changed when he was almost asleep. How he sometimes mumbled phrases I couldn't quite catch. How the curve of his back rose and fell beneath the sheet like a silent tide. And I hated that I noticed. I hated how my brain recorded every detail. Our fake marriage came with a domestic routine we didn't talk about but somehow followed anyway. Marcus brewed the coffee each morning, black, no sugar, always ready by 6:15. I folded our laundry on Sundays, mostly to avoid the way he balled his socks like a serial killer. He left his shoes lined up by the door. I kicked mine off wherever they landed. He'd read with the TV on low volume. I'd scroll my phone and pretend not to glance at his hands when he turned the page. We weren't talking about anything personal. We didn't have to. The quiet said enough. Sometimes it was awkward. Sometimes it was worse than awkward. It was comfortable. And comfort, in my line of work, and in my personal history, was more dangerous than any bullet. I grew up in a town where hugging another boy for too long got you side-eyed. Where you pretended to like girls until it became easier than the truth. I didn't come out until I was 24, and even then, it was half-whispered and conditional, only to people I trusted. And I never brought it into the precinct. Being a gay cop was like walking a wire strung between two worlds that didn't want to claim you. So, yeah, sharing a bed with Marcus Reed, even under a false name and a fake marriage license, was not something I was emotionally prepared for. Which made what happened Tuesday night even harder to process. It was late. The AC had kicked off, the room warm and still. I must have been dreaming. Something slow and soft and safe. And then I woke up. Marcus's arm was around me. Not flung over me by accident. Not barely touching. Cradling me. Like I belonged there. My head was tucked beneath his chin. One of his legs had slid between mine, anchoring me close. His breath brushed against my hairline in slow, steady waves. And I didn't move. I should have, could have, but I didn't. I closed my eyes and let it happen. Let the world blur into warmth and heartbeat. Let myself feel something I'd spent years learning how to ignore. I don't know when we shifted. I don't know if he did it awake or in a dream. But I stayed there until the morning light crept across the windows and the spell broke. When I finally sat up, he stirred, blinked once, then turned onto his back without a word. We never talked about it. We got dressed. He made coffee. I folded his hoodie that had ended up on my side of the bed. It was business as usual. But I felt different. Like the line I was trying so hard not to cross had been erased while I was asleep. That afternoon, he handed me a fake wedding photo for our living room display. The agency had doctored it perfectly. Me in a suit, him with his arm around my waist, both of us laughing like we had a reason to. I stared at it for a beat too long. Marcus tilted his head. Too much. I shook my head. No. Just weird, seeing us like that. He didn't respond. Just stepped past me and placed the photo gently on the mantel. And for a second, it looked real. Too real. That night, when we went to bed, we didn't say anything. But we both slept facing the middle. And neither of us turned away. I told myself it was part of the job. But my heart didn't seem to care about protocol anymore. The thing about undercover work is, the longer you pretend, the more the pretending stops feeling like acting. You move like them, talk like them, become what the world around you expects to see. But in the end, it's still a job. Until someone pulls a gun on your partner. And suddenly, it's not just a job anymore. It was supposed to be a simple job, just a quiet little meet and greet behind the gardening center off West Briar Lane. We'd been tracking the O'Connors' deliveries for weeks, and intel said this guy was their runner. We weren't even supposed to intervene, just observe and report. But the guy was jumpy. Too jumpy. He made Marcus immediately. I saw it in the way his eyes shifted, too sharp, too focused. Marcus moved forward, maybe to de-escalate, maybe just to slow the guy down. That's when he pulled the gun. Time stretched thin, thick enough to drown in. I didn't think. I launched forward, tackled the guy to the ground, my knee slamming into gravel, wrist twisting the weapon from his hand. Shouts. Footsteps. Someone yelling, "Down! Police!" But all I could see was Marcus, just a few feet away, frozen, staring at the gun like he'd been inches from the end. Because he had been. We didn't speak much on the way back. Our handler debriefed us, said we'd done well, the arrest would stick, and we were cleared to go back to our married life across the street. I nodded through it all, numb. Marcus looked steady as always, but I saw the way his jaw flexed, the way he rubbed his wrist like he needed to feel something. When we walked into the apartment, I dropped the keys on the counter and just stood there. The silence pressed in around us. Then I turned. "You didn't see it." He blinked. "What?" "The gun. You didn't see it fast enough. I had it under control." "Bullshit." My voice cracked like a snapped wire. "You were 2 seconds away from a bullet to the chest and you froze." Marcus stepped toward me, voice low. "I said I had it." "No, you didn't," I snapped. "I had it." I tackled him. "I took the gun. I saved your damn life." Silence. Then I exhaled, the adrenaline crashing down like a tidal wave. My hands were shaking. I turned away, bracing against the counter, trying to catch my breath. "I thought I could handle this," I muttered. "The pretending, the fake marriage, the bed sharing, all of it." My voice broke again. "But you nearly died today." And all I could think was, what if you never knew? He stepped closer. I felt his presence before I saw him. His hand hovered near my back before resting gently between my shoulder blades. Not forceful, not demanding, just there. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I turned around and before I could stop myself, my forehead was against his chest. His arms wrapped around me, solid and warm and steady. I didn't cry. Not exactly. But I let the tension unravel in his arms. Let myself exist in the safety of someone who knew the danger too. He held me like he'd been waiting to. No words. Just breath. Just heartbeat. We stood like that for what felt like a lifetime. And then, his hand slid along my jaw, gentle, careful. I looked up, and for the briefest moment, he leaned in, just enough for me to feel the question in the air between us. A kiss that hadn't happened yet. And almost did. But I turned my face away, eyes squeezed shut. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't afford this." He pulled back instantly. Didn't push. Didn't ask. Just stepped away. Gave me space even when part of me wanted to scream for him not to. That night, I lay in bed with my back to him. But I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way his arms felt around me. About the fact that I almost let him kiss me. About the fact that he wanted to. I saved his life today. But he doesn't know he's been saving mine in quieter ways. With his silence. His steadiness. His nearness in the night. He was never supposed to mean anything. But the job blurred weeks ago. And now I didn't know how to draw the line anymore. I saved his life today. But he doesn't know he's been saving mine in quieter ways. The gala was held at the Briarwood Country Club. Polished marble floors. String quartet humming near the buffet. Champagne flutes passed around like candy. Marcus looked sharp in his tux. Dark, tailored, crisp white shirt beneath. He didn't do anything flashy, no cufflinks, no cologne. But he still looked like he could own the place. And apparently he could. Because within minutes, we were surrounded by half the neighborhood. All smiles and murmurs and comments like, "You two are such a stunning couple. I can tell. There's just something real about the way he looks at you." And then, "How long have you been together? You look so in sync." I forced a laugh. Feels like forever. Marcus wrapped his hand around my waist, pulled me just slightly closer. In a good way, he added with a faint smile, and everyone around us swooned. I wanted to scream, because he said it perfectly. Played the part flawlessly. Too flawlessly. Every time he touched me. His hand grazing mine as he handed me a drink. His voice brushing against my ear as he leaned in to whisper something. It felt less like acting and more like memory. A memory I shouldn't have. We were standing near the bar when I noticed one of the O'Connor's associates. A guy we'd flagged as cautious and calculating. Watching us. Not casually. Not socially. Studying. His gaze bounced between our faces, our posture, the space between our bodies. Marcus caught it too. I felt the shift in his grip on my back. Then he did it. He turned toward me mid-conversation and said, low but clear, "Hey, look at me." And before I could process anything, he kissed me. Not a peck. Not a quick brush to throw off a tail. A kiss. Warm. Grounded. Intentional. His lips on mine, steady and soft, fingers curling slightly into my jacket like he needed the contact just as much as I did. And I kissed him back. I didn't even think. I just moved. My hand on his chest, his thumb grazing my jaw, the world around us blurring into strings and murmurs and white noise. When we finally pulled apart, seconds? Hours? His forehead rested against mine just briefly, before he turned away with a cool smile, raised his champagne glass, and said to the suspect, "He gets shy when I do that." The man chuckled and wandered off satisfied. But I wasn't. Not even close. We didn't speak again until we were back at the apartment. He took off his tie slowly, casually, as if the night hadn't just tipped my whole world on its side. I threw my blazer on the couch. He glanced over. "Something wrong?" "Yeah," I said too fast. "Something is wrong." He leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "All right, let's hear it." "You kissed me." "You're welcome," he said coolly, but his voice had an edge. "That wasn't part of the plan," I snapped. He tilted his head. "It sold the cover. You could have told me. You would have overthought it." "I'm overthinking it now." He stared at me then. Not defensive. Not smug. Just calm. "Why'd you kiss me like that?" I asked, quieter this time. His reply was simple. "Because I wanted to." The air shifted. I stepped back, like distance could undo what just happened. But my back hit the wall and Marcus didn't move. He didn't come closer either. He just waited. "You wanted to?" I repeated, barely able to say it aloud. "Yeah." His voice was soft now. "I've wanted to for a while." I looked away. "You're really good at messing with people's heads. You know that?" "I'm not messing with yours." "But this was a job," I said. "We were supposed to play a part." And somewhere along the way, I stopped playing. His words cracked something in me. "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "Neither do I," he admitted. But tonight, it felt real. Silence stretched between us again, full of tension and weight and questions I didn't know how to ask. And then I moved. I crossed the space between us and kissed him. This time I kissed him. There was no one watching.
No assignment.
No handler in an earpiece. Just two men who'd been dancing around a line for too long, finally stepping over it. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect. It was honest. His hand found the side of my face, and mine slid to his waist. We kissed like we'd been holding it in for weeks, because we had. When we broke apart, neither of us said anything right away. The room was quiet, still, and for the first time I didn't feel like I was pretending. I felt seen. I felt wanted. I felt like me. We didn't sleep right away that night. We sat side by side on the bed, legs brushing, hands nearly touching but not quite. And I think we both knew. Everything had changed. No more pretending. No more rehearsed gestures. Whatever this was, it had crossed the line. And I wasn't sure if I was scared, or finally free. That night, the badge came off. And for the first time, I let someone in. It ended with a knock. Not gunfire. Not sirens. Not some dramatic raid like in the movies. Just a knock on the O'Connor's door, 3 agents in suits, and a quiet "you're under arrest." before the neighbors even had time to peek out from behind their curtains. After all the surveillance, late nights, cover stories, fake kisses, and real ones, I expected something bigger. But that's the thing about endings. They rarely ask if you're ready. The case was airtight. Surveillance from our front room, audio from the mics planted in their garden shed, footage of the transaction at the gala. The O'Connors went down without a fight, along with 4 associates. Our handler said the department would be very pleased. We debriefed in a sterile room with cold coffee and folders thicker than our paycheck envelopes. I stared at the clock the whole time. Marcus didn't look at me once. Back at the apartment, our apartment at least for a few more hours, he moved like a stranger packing for a weekend trip. Quiet, efficient, distant. We didn't talk about the kiss. We didn't talk about that night. We didn't talk about anything. I folded a shirt I didn't recognize and placed it in the property of evidence bin near the door. Felt like losing more than a wardrobe. I thought maybe once it was just us again, things would come out. Some kind of confession or at least a conversation. Instead, we moved around each other like ghosts in a house that wasn't ours anymore. That evening, we had our last dinner at the kitchen counter. Leftover pasta, lukewarm and oversalted. I tried to look at him, really look, but he kept his eyes on the wall, chewing slowly like it helped him avoid everything else. "This is it then?" I said. He nodded, not lifting his gaze. "Yeah. I mean, we made it, right? Closed the case." "We did." Silence. I wanted to ask. I wanted to say, what were we? What was that kiss? Was it just a cover or something more? But I didn't. And neither did he. He finished his food, rinsed the plate, and walked to the bedroom. I stayed at the table, staring at a half-empty glass of water and wishing it had something stronger in it. When I walked into the bedroom a few minutes later, the bed was already stripped. The drawer he'd used was empty. His badge and sidearm were gone. He stood near the door with his go-bag slung over one shoulder. "You heading out?" I asked, voice low. "Yeah." "To the station?" "Eventually." Another pause. God, we were full of them now. He opened the door. Light from the hallway cut across the room in a sharp angle. And then nothing.
No goodbye. No nod. No smile.
He just walked out. Closed the door behind him with the same quiet he'd entered my life with, and left the silence louder than anything he could have said. I stayed there for a while. Didn't pack. Didn't move. Just sat on the edge of the bed that now felt too big, in a room that felt like someone had rewound time and scrubbed all the emotion out. I wandered the apartment slowly, touching things he'd touched. The coffee mug. The spot on the couch where he used to read. The edge of the dresser where I once leaned while brushing my teeth. Listening to him pretend he didn't care what side of the bed he slept on. I ran my hand over the picture frame, our fake wedding photo still sitting perfectly on the mantel. 2 men in suits, smiling, looking like they knew something the world didn't. And maybe we did. Maybe we still did. But now one of us had walked away, and the other was left behind, pretending it hadn't meant anything. Just like we'd practiced. I went back to my old place the next morning. The walls felt thinner. The couch was stiffer. The coffee tasted wrong. It was the same apartment I'd lived in before the assignment. Same furniture. Same creaky ceiling fan. But it felt like a borrowed life now. One I didn't fit in anymore. Because somewhere between pretending to be someone else and pretending to be in love with someone I wasn't supposed to want, I stopped pretending. And I think he had too. I sat by the window that night, lights off, watching the street below fade into dark, and I whispered into the stillness, "Come back." But he didn't, and maybe he wouldn't. The case was over. The assignment was done. But my heart hadn't been briefed. Life went back to normal. Sort of. My apartment was still cold in the mornings. My badge still clipped to my belt. My coffee still bitter from the machine downstairs. On the surface, everything looked the same. But inside, everything had shifted. I walked the beat like muscle memory, filled out reports like a machine, laughed at locker room jokes, smiled when I was supposed to, but I felt like I was watching someone else live my life from 10 feet outside my own skin. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. It wasn't just the kiss. It was the small things. How he'd pause halfway through buttoning his shirt to look out the window like he was memorizing the sky. How he always cooked too much pasta. How he'd nudge my foot under the dinner table when I got too serious. None of that was part of the assignment. None of it was scripted. And now that he was gone, it felt like the world had gone grayscale. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. No calls.
No texts.
No follow-up from the task force. It was like the whole operation had been filed away in some locked drawer labeled temporary. I told myself to move on. Told myself it was nothing. Just a mission. Just chemistry under pressure. Just proximity. But then came the knock. A single, quiet knock at the door. I didn't even check the peephole. My chest already knew. When I opened it, there he was. Marcus Reed. Same black jacket. Same tense jawline. Same eyes that saw too much. But this time he looked tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. The kind you fix with truth. I tried, he said. I didn't answer. Just stared at him, barely breathing. I tried to move on, he continued. Told myself it was just a job. That it didn't mean anything. That we were just playing a part. His voice cracked. But I couldn't stop remembering how it felt. To be yours. My throat closed. He stepped inside slowly, eyes never leaving mine. I think I've been in love with you since the first week, he said. I just didn't know what to do with it. I let out a shaky laugh. You've got a funny way of showing it. Disappearing without a word. I didn't know what I was to you, he said. I didn't want to make it worse. I folded my arms, trying to hold myself together. You didn't make it worse, Marcus. You just made it real. And then you left. He looked down. Then, quietly, I was scared. I nodded. So was I. He looked up, eyes glassy. Are you still? I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. He melted into me like he'd been waiting the whole time. We stood like that in the middle of my apartment. No cover names, no assignment, no audience. Just us. And when we finally pulled back, I touched the side of his face and said, You weren't the only one who stopped pretending. His eyes searched mine. So what now? I smiled. We figure it out. No playbook. No mission. His fingers found mine. And this time, when we kissed, it wasn't to sell a lie. It was to claim the truth. Later, we sat on the floor with takeout between us and no pressure to say anything profound. But the silence felt different now. Full, not empty. Comfortable. Earned. He fell asleep on the couch beside me, his head on my shoulder. And I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Not in the way that counted. We went undercover as a couple. But somewhere along the way, we became one. Did you feel that too? The line between pretending and real love. If the story hit you in the heart, let us know in the comments. We read every single one. Drop a like if you believe love can sneak up on you, even when you're undercover. And don't forget to subscribe for more slow-burn gay love stories, packed with tension, emotion, and real connection. Your story matters, and someone out there is waiting to hear it.